it's sort of like a bunch of unruly school children that never were disciplined or accepted it, just sort of blabbing on. There's method in it, but it's still just blabbing. So, the Irish courts, are they committing treason or not? Well, let's establish what treason is. Treason is when you don't do what you're supposed to do in a position given to you by the people. In other words, if a judge knows better and doesn't do what he should be doing, he commits treason, especially when it pertains to everyday life in a country. So he's been given his power by the Constitution, or by the people who wrote the Constitution. It's been collaboratively agreed upon and formulated, and the judge must implement the Constitution. The integrity of social order in the state must be of primary importance, and that is the rights of the citizen. That's what social order is and dependent upon. Well, when we find that in legislature there's something has been written that isn't in line with our rights, or actually attempts to remove them, and those in power are aware of it, it's been brought to their knowledge, and it's been brought to the courts to be tested for its constitutionality, how it lines up with what's written in terms of how they should conduct themselves in their court. If it doesn't line up with the Constitution, if it's found unconstitutional, and they know that it might be unconstitutional in both cases, and they don't implement correctly their findings by removing that piece from legislature, then they commit high treason. Because now they're doing something or not doing something, as the case may be, that's directly allowing legislature that's unconstitutional to continue, even after they know it's unconstitutional, or might be. Even if it might be unconstitutional, and they've acknowledged that it might be, and that it remains an open question and that they should test it, and they don't, then they are committing high treason, because they're reneging on their responsibilities, even though they know that there are grave ramifications for so doing. So they're now committing high treason. So are the Irish courts committing high treason? In my opinion, and it's educated, yes. Where's it educated in Trinity? No. But it's educated. You don't have to go to Trinity to know these things. You can buy the Constitution yourself and read it. It's only about €5. Although bring a tenner, because, inflation. So the way they're manipulating the situation is by not doing anything. Because they're being aggressively non-committal, because they know if they do something, they'll be implicated in what they've done. But it's gone beyond that. They're now implicated in what they're not doing. They're implicated in failing to test the constitutionality of sections 115 and 117 of the Criminal Justice Act 2006, the constitutionality of section 7 of the Criminal Justice Public Order Act 1994, and the constitutionality of sections 113 and 114 of the Criminal Justice Act 2006 also, because they give definition, meaning, context to sections 115 and 117. So you couldn't test 115 and 117 without testing 113 and 114. So they need to be tested. The Irish High Court have said they would test them. In the middle of a case, abandoned testing them. Said that it remains an open question for an appropriate case, even though they had an appropriate case in front of them, because they themselves scheduled for it to be tested in that case. Never gave us any idea of why. They never said it was an unreasonable case or an inappropriate case. They just said that they didn't test the constitutionality of it. So they're being aggressively non-committal. They're not saying anything where they're not absolutely forced to by way of procedure. So They're just avoiding the procedure. They're avoiding the testing of the constitutionality of those things because they know that if it's found that they've allowed an unconstitutional legislature come into pass, that it naturally calls into question many other legislations, because they weren't either arrived upon in a way that is constitutional. Many of these legislations were amended, but it wasn't even brought for the vote. Many of these legislations were added and legislature augmented, but it wasn't even brought to the attention of the people. So they're operating in a way, in an aptitude, and in a manner that is treasonous and goes against democracy and democratic procedure, protocol, and the constitution of our country. So this is occupancy we're seeing in our day. This is nothing small. The fact that they're now not doing something they know should be done, and they agreed should be done, and even scheduled for doing, like it was number one on the schedule of the day in court, and they continued with the court case, brought it to conclusion, and just point blank failed to test the constitutionality of those sections, given no reason as to why, and still haven't done it. So they're committing high treason by not doing it, by omission, because they're failing to carry out their office in a way that is imperative. So they're committing high treason. That is my educated opinion and belief, because it has been found in the High Court, and I can show you why. It has been found in the High Court that members of An Garda Síochána are not allowed to prosecute in court. They're not lawyers. They can't pick and choose sides because they have to be impartial, and the presumption of innocence has to be honoured, until there's a conviction. And even the conviction has to be based upon solid, irrefutable, or substantiated evidence, not merely prima facie. Prima facie evidence is not, you cannot conclude a judgment merely on prima facie evidence. You're not permitted to do that. It's highly illegal, highly unlawful. It's against the Constitution. Prima facie evidence can of course be given, but it has to be backed up with solid, irrefutable evidence, especially when it's addressing the character of a person, because people could say anything about anybody and they wouldn't have to substantiate it. We have a word for that. It's called defamation of character. It's called libel. And if you do that, if you try to damage a person's character or reputation, of course, you can damage their life. I mean, people would be reluctant to employ them because of what you've said about them. And so you have directly or indirectly harmed their life by saying things about them you haven't substantiated. And so anybody could say anything about anybody, harm their life and get away with it. So we call that in the Irish Constitution good name, your right to good name. Meaning you have a right to have a reputable name, and your work ethic to be recognised, and that kind of thing. And so, and to be honoured within the society, etc. You have a right to be treated equally and not be discriminated against. We see that even our big supermarkets aren't doing that anymore. Tesco are saying, come in and get the club card and we'll give you something at a third of the price. Now you're creating subdivisions within society, some of whom you'll give a good price to and others you won't. So what they're doing is they are actively discriminating against minorities, which is inciting violence, inciting harm against their life. And this goes against the Irish Constitution. So the club card system is also a treasonous action, because it goes directly against the rights of a human being to expect that he's going to be treated like everybody else in that society, and not discriminated against or penalised monetarily for not associating with somebody. Yes, you have the right of association, but companies don't have the right to penalise you for not associating. If they're offering a service to the public, they have to offer it equally to all members, all subdivisions, all minorities, or all factions. They're not allowed to penalise minority groups that they themselves have cordoned. They're saying the people that haven't got the club card here, well, they're going to pay 3 times the price. That's extortionate. So Tesco Ireland are breaking the laws of this land. Highly. I mean, we're talking treason level. So there are so many treasons going on in our day. And it's no surprise they removed the death penalty for doing it, at least in writing. Before they would start committing all these treasons. So, I mean, it's late in the day, guys, and they're sitting up there in the High Court of Ireland with it on their desk, test these legislations, and they're not doing it. I say, look, imagine this, right? You go into the High Court and you say, something doesn't look right about this. This goes against our constitution. They go, give us a look at that. Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. We should test this. This warrants testing. And then they put it in the drawer and never take it out again. And go blah 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 blah. This remains an open question. This remains an open question for an appropriate case. Hold up. Wait! Don't close the drawer. You assigned a case. You put it number 1 on the schedule. What? How is there a more appropriate case than one you've assigned? Who are we waiting on? Are we waiting on Adonai to come down here and schedule this? Why won't you do your job that you said you would do and that you recognise needs doing? But you're hiding that in the drawer, away from the Irish people. Do your job, or be arrested. Why would you expect not to be arrested? Jesus is Lord.